Welcome to Health Live. Today we're going deep into psychoneuroimmunology.
Okay.
It's basically how your thoughts and feelings and all those life experiences can really impact your immune system. We're going to be looking at a chapter from the book Psychoneuroimmunology, written by Michael R. Irwin and George M. Slavich back in 2016. Are you ready to have your mind blown?
I am. I think so.
I think so too.
This chapter's packed with all sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, so let's just jump right in. So first things first, what exactly is psychoneuroimmunology,
Are you?
and why should we even care?
Well, you've probably heard the saying mind over matter, right?
Right.
Well, psychoneuroimmunology is really kind of taking that to a whole new level. It's exploring those intricate ways that our central nervous system, so like our brain and our spinal cord, how they interact with our immune system.
Okay.
And what's so fascinating is that it's not just about responding to the physical threats like viruses and bacteria and things like that.
Right.
It's about the external world, in a much broader sense. Things like stressful situations, those social interactions, even our own thoughts and perceptions can trigger physiological responses that directly affect our immune system.
So it's not just about the germs, it's about everything.
Yeah, it's all encompassing.
It's about how we experience the world, yeah.
Exactly. And how our bodies respond to it.
Okay, so before we get too far into the specifics, can we just do a quick recap?
Sure.
Immunity 101.
Absolutely.
We have two main lines of defense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Innate immunity
Yes.
and adaptive immunity.
That's right.
So think of innate immunity as your body's rapid response team. It's the first line of defense, super quick to react, but not very specific. Kind of like a security guard just patrolling, make sure everything's good.
Yeah.
Then you've got adaptive immunity. That's more like your special forces unit. Highly trained, they're targeted, they remember past attack rules, and they can create very specific defenses like antibodies and provide long-lasting protection.
Right. So it's like a memory.
Yes, exactly.
The innate is oh, there's something there, I'm going to attack it.
Right.
Adaptive is oh, I remember you.
Exactly.
So let me go get my specific weapon for you.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so we got that innate immunity is that quick general response. Adaptive immunity is a little bit slower, more of a targeted attack. But how does our brain actually communicate with our immune system? What's the connection?
Well, that's where the HEPA axis comes in.
Okay.
It's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. And this is like a communication highway between your brain and your body. So when you perceive a threat, and this threat can be a physical danger or even just a social stressor,
Okay.
your HPA axis kicks into gear. So the hypothalamus will send a signal down to the pituitary gland, which then releases hormones to stimulate the adrenal glands.
Okay.
The adrenal glands then release what are called glucocorticoids.
Oh.
And these are powerful hormones that have a direct impact on your immune system.
So it's like a chain reaction.
Yes, exactly.
Starts with a perceived threat and ends with this hormonal response that can either boost or suppress our immune system.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
And here's where it gets really interesting. In the short term, glucocorticoids actually help regulate inflammation, keeping your immune response in check.
Okay.
But when that stress becomes chronic,
Right.
it can lead to something called glucocorticoid resistance.
So what does that mean for our bodies? What's going on?
So in simple terms, it means that your body's natural anti-inflammatory processes are becoming less effective. And this can have implications for a range of conditions, from things like anxiety and depression to even physical ailments like arthritis and heart disease.
Oh, wow. So chronic stress is basically making us more vulnerable to inflammation and disease.
Unfortunately, that's kind of what the research is showing.
That's kind of scary.
It is a significant finding, and it underscores just how interconnected our mental and physical health truly are.
Yeah.
Now, remember how we were talking about the external world playing a role?
Yeah.
It's not just physical threats that trigger this response. Social stressors can have the same effect.
Okay, let's talk about that. What kind of social stressors are we talking about?
So think about things like social evaluation or rejection isolation. These situations, even though they don't involve any physical harm, they can activate your HPA axis and trigger an inflammatory response.
Okay.
The research actually shows that our bodies react in a very similar way to social stress as they do to a physical injury.
So our bodies are basically preparing for a bacterial infection, even if the wound is purely emotional or social.
That's right.
Wow.
It's called the conserved transcriptional response to adversity, or CTRA. Essentially, our genes are listening for signs of danger. whether it's a physical injury or a social threat. And they respond by increasing pro-inflammatory activity.
Wow, that's incredible. It really shows how deeply connected our minds and bodies are.
It does, and it highlights the importance of understanding how our social experiences can influence our physical health.
Okay, so we talked a lot about stress, but what about other factors like sleep? I mean, everybody knows sleep is important,
Yeah.
but how does it actually fit into all of this?
Well, sleep isn't just about rest. It plays a crucial role in regulating your immune system when you don't get enough sleep,
Hmm.
especially when you're under stress. It disrupts the balance of your immune response
Yeah.
and can lead to an increase in pro-inflammatory markers like CRP and IL-6.
So like those late nights are doing more damage than just making me feel tired the next day.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Poor sleep, especially chronic sleep deprivation, can increase your risk for a whole host of health problems.
Wow. This is starting to feel a little bit overwhelming. Is there anything we could actually do
Sure.
to take control of our psychoneuroimmunological health?
That's a great question, and the good news is you are not powerless. There is a lot you can do to support a healthy balance between your mind, your body, and your immune system. We'll dive into those strategies in just a moment, but first let's take a quick break.
We've been talking about how chronic stress and a lack of sleep can like really mess with our immune systems.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's kind of overwhelming, but
But right before the break, we kind of hinted at some good news.
yes, we did. We did.
There's a silver lining.
There is.
While we've focused on the challenges, there's also a lot of like power in understanding these connections,
Right.
that allows us to make informed choices about how we manage our health and how we manage our stress.
Totally. So what can we do? What can we do?
Well, what's most promising areas of research is in the field of mind-body practices,
Yeah.
things like Tai Chi yoga meditation.
Okay.
These have shown real promise in boosting antiviral immunity and reducing inflammation. I've heard a lot about those, but I always just assumed it was more about just stress reduction and like general well-being.
Mhm.
How do they actually like impact our immune system?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's not like you're physically fighting off invaders while you're meditating, right?
Right.
But remember that fight or flight response we talked about?
Yeah.
When that's constantly triggered, it creates this like wear and tear on the body.
Right.
And so these practices help regulate your nervous system's response to stress.
Okay, so instead of being in that constant state of high alert, our bodies can relax and our immune systems can function better.
Precisely.
Okay.
And there's a growing body of research to support this. Studies have found that people who regularly engage in these practices tend to have lower levels of those pro-inflammatory markers we discussed earlier,
wow.
like CRP and IL-6.
So it's not just about feeling calmer. There are actual changes, measurable changes happening in our bodies.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And it's not just limited to, those specific practices. Even just engaging in activities that promote relaxation and stress reduction can be beneficial, like spending time in nature, listening to calming music, or even just taking a few deep breaths.
It sounds like it's all about finding what works for you and then just making it a regular part of your routine.
I couldn't agree more. It's about making that conscious effort to prioritize your mental and emotional well-being. And what's even more fascinating is that research has shown that these practices can even impact gene expression.
Wait, really? So you're saying that meditation can change our DNA?
Not the DNA itself, but how our genes are expressed. Think of it like a dimmer switch. Certain genes can be turned up or turned down.
Okay.
For example, studies show that mindfulness medication can lead to changes in gene expression related to inflammation.
That's pretty amazing.
It is pretty incredible.
Wow.
It really highlights how interconnected our minds and bodies are.
Yeah.
But even with all these tools, it's important to remember that they're not a cure-all.
Right. They're not magic. It's got to be like a holistic thing, right?
Right. It's about incorporating them into a holistic approach to health. That includes things like a balanced diet, regular exercise, and of course, good sleep habits.
Before sleep.
Can't forget about sleep.
Right. And what about like social connection?
Oh, that's a great point. Strong social relationships have been shown to have a positive impact on both mental and physical health, including immune function.
Interesting.
So make time for friends and family, engage in activities you enjoy, and build a supportive community around you. It all contributes to a more balanced and resilient you.
I like that.
So we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive into psychoneuroimmunology, from the basics of immunity to the power of these mind-body practices.
Yes, we have.
But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to ponder. We've talked a lot about how negative experiences like stress can negatively impact your immune system. But what about positive emotions?
Could experiences like joy, gratitude, or love actually boost our immune defenses?
That's a fascinating
It
question.
really is.
It is, we focused a lot on the negative impacts of like stress and adversity,
Right.
but there's this like growing body of research exploring the flip side, the potential of positive emotions to enhance our immune function.
So instead of just focusing on what we shouldn't do, maybe we should be thinking about what we can do
Exactly.
to cultivate these positive emotions.
Yeah. And the great thing is there are so many simple yet powerful ways to do this. Think about spending quality time with loved ones,
Yeah.
practicing gratitude, engaging in hobbies that bring you joy, or even just taking a moment to appreciate the beauty around you.
It's almost like you're giving your immune system like a little extra boost of support.
I love that analogy. And while the research in this area is still relatively young, there are some really promising findings. For example, studies have shown that people who report higher levels of happiness and optimism tend to have lower levels of inflammation.
Oh, wow.
So those good vibes might actually be doing more than just making us feel good. They might be contributing to a healthier internal environment, making us less susceptible to disease.
That's awesome.
It really highlights how powerful our minds are and how deeply interconnected they are with our physical health.
This whole conversation has really shifted my perspective.
Yeah.
I used to think of my immune system as this like separate entity just doing its own thing, but now I realize it's so deeply intertwined with my mental and emotional state.
That's the beauty of psychoneuroimmunology. It reminds us that we're not just a collection of separate parts. We're like this complex and interconnected system.
Yeah.
Everything is linked.
It's empowering to know that we have more control over our health than we might realize.
Absolutely. By understanding this mind-body connection, we can start making choices that support our overall well-being. And it's not about being perfect, it's about progress, not perfection.
Yeah, small changes.
Exactly. It's about, making small, sustainable changes that add up over time, prioritizing self-care and cultivating a positive mindset,
Yeah, love that.
and staying curious and continuing to learn about this incredible field of study. There's still so much to discover. Well, we hope this deep dive into psychoneuroimmunology has sparked your curiosity and given you some practical takeaways to apply in your own life. Remember, you have the power to influence your health in some really profound ways.
Absolutely.
So take care of yourself, mind, body, and spirit. Keep learning, keep exploring, and keep those positive vibes flowing.
Thanks for joining us on Health Live.